Nari pressed her hand against the glass window and stared at the massive station below. Station Prime looked like a metal flower floating in space, with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. Each arm held training facilities, living quarters, and docking bays. This was where the Galactic Coalition trained its warriors. She was nervous. Her hands were shaking a little. First time seeing it? Someone asked behind her. Nari turned and saw another human, a man with tired eyes and a medical uniform. His badge read Dr. Hyan, Medical Officer. "Yes," Nari said. "I'm the new cultural liaison. I arrived this morning." Hyan nodded slowly. "I've been here 2 years. Let me give you some advice. Stay out of the way. Don't touch anything. And whatever you do, don't go near the training grounds when cubs are present." "Cubs?" Nari asked. "That's what they call the young ones. The juveniles. Every species sends them here to learn how to fight, how to work in packs, how to be warriors." Hyan looked out the window. "They don't like us much. Any of them." Nari had read the reports. She knew humans were barely accepted in the coalition. Most alien species thought humans were too soft, too weak, too emotional. Humans cried when they were sad. They formed attachments too easily. They cared about things that didn't help them survive. The reptilian Skreth called humans the weeping ones. The insectoid Vrel said humans had broken instincts. Even the crystalline Mothkar, who were usually polite, kept their distance from human personnel. "Why do they let us stay if they don't like us?" Nari asked. "Because we're useful," Hyan said. "Humans are good at solving problems in weird ways. We see patterns others miss. We think of solutions that don't make sense to them." He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "They need us. They just don't want to need us." The ship docked an hour later. Nari grabbed her bags and followed the stream of personnel through the airlock. The station was huge inside. The corridors were wide enough to fit 3 Skreth walking side by side. The ceiling was high enough for Vrel to spread their wing cases. Everything was built for beings much larger than humans. Nari felt very small. Her first meeting was with High Marshal Varex, the station commander. His office was at the top of the central tower. When Nari walked in, she had to look up to see his face. Varex was a Skreth, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in dark green scales. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits. He looked at Nari the way someone might look at an insect. "You are the human observer," Varex said. His voice was deep and cold. "You will watch our training methods. You will take notes. You will not interfere." "Yes, sir," Nari said. "Humans have been given permission to observe as part of the integration program," Varex continued. "I did not vote for this program. I believe humans are too fragile for military service. But the council has decided, so I will tolerate your presence." He leaned forward. "Do not make me regret this tolerance." Nari left the office with her heart pounding. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but Varex's hostility was worse than she expected. Over the next 3 days, Nari explored the station. She learned the layout, met other staff members, and read through mountains of training protocols. The Coalition trained its young warriors through something called the Proving Grounds. Cubs from all species were put together in packs. They competed against each other. They fought. They learned that weakness was shameful and strength was everything. The report showed that cubs who failed training were sent home in disgrace. Their families were dishonored. Some species would never speak to a failed cub again. It seemed cruel to Nari, but she kept her opinions to herself. On her 4th day, Nari was supposed to observe a training session from the observation deck. She had a map, but the station was confusing. All the corridors looked the same. She took a wrong turn, then another. She went through a door marked with symbols she didn't recognize. Suddenly, she was standing in a huge open space. The floor was covered in sand and obstacles. Dozens of young aliens were moving in formation, practicing combat drills. These were the cubs. They moved together in tight groups, their packs, striking at training dummies and jumping over barriers. Trainers stood at the edges, shouting commands. Nari froze. She had walked right into a restricted area. She wasn't supposed to be here. She started to back up toward the door. Then something strange happened. One of the Skreth hatchlings stopped moving. Its head turned toward Nari. The young reptile stood completely still for a moment. Its whole body tensed. Then it ran toward her. Not a walk. Not a slow approach. A full sprint. Two more Skreth hatchlings broke from their pack and ran too. A Vrel nymph spread its wing cases and buzzed across the training ground. Two small mothcar, their crystal bodies flashing with light, moved toward Nari as fast as their limbs could carry them. The trainers started shouting. The other cubs stood frozen in confusion. Within seconds, nearly a dozen young aliens surrounded Nari. They made sounds she had never heard before. High-pitched whines, clicking noises. The Skreth hatchlings pressed their snouts against her legs. The Vrel nymph climbed onto her shoulder. The mothcar touched her hands with their crystalline appendages. They were desperate. They were frantic. And they wouldn't let go. Nari didn't know what to do. The young aliens clung to her like she was the only safe thing in the universe. Their sounds filled her ears. She could feel them trembling against her. Get away from her. One of the trainers roared. The cubs didn't move. If anything, they pressed closer. A human man came running across the training ground. He was tall and muscular, wearing a trainer's uniform. His badge said Taiyang, head combat instructor. Nari was surprised. She didn't know there were any human trainers here. Don't move, Taiyang said to her quietly. You'll scare them. I'm not doing anything, Nari whispered back. They just ran to me. Taiyang's eyes were wide. I know. I saw. This has never happened before. He turned to the other trainers. Give me a minute. Let me handle this. The Skreth trainer, a massive male with scars across his snout, growled. This is your human's fault. She has contaminated the cubs. She just walked in, Taiyang said. She didn't do anything. Taiyang crouched down next to Nari. The cubs watched him but didn't move away. He spoke in a soft voice. It's okay. You're safe. No one is going to hurt you. He was talking to the cubs, not to Nari. Slowly, carefully, Taiyang started to pick up the young aliens one by one. He held them gently, like they were made of glass. He spoke to each one in their own language, using simple words. Good cub. Brave one. It's all right now. The Vrel nymph on Nari's shoulder wouldn't let go. It wrapped its 6 legs around her neck and made a sound like crying. This one won't come, Nari said. Taiyang looked at the nymph. His expression was sad. That's Clickwing. She's had a hard time in training. The other Vrel pick on her because she's small. Can I carry her? Nari asked. You'll have to, Taiyang said. She's not going to leave you. Together, they got the cubs back to their packs. The other trainers stared at Nari like she was dangerous. The adult aliens kept their distance. But the cubs kept turning around to look at her. Their eyes followed her as Taiyang led her out of the training ground. Once they were in the corridor, Taiyang stopped. He ran his hand through his hair. You need to report to High Marshal Varex immediately. He'll want to know what happened. What did happen? Nari asked. Clickwing was still on her shoulder, refusing to leave. I don't know, Taiyang said. In 400 years of coalition training, cubs have never broken formation like that. They're taught from hatching that pack loyalty is everything. They would rather die than abandon their pack. He looked at Clickwing. But they all ran to you. They chose you over their packs. Nari touched Clickwing's wing case gently. The nymph made a soft buzzing sound. What's going to happen to them? They'll be punished, Taiyang said quietly. Breaking formation is a serious offense. They'll probably be denied food for a cycle. Maybe longer. That's not fair, Nari said. They're just children. They're warriors in training, Taiyang said. There's a difference. But he didn't sound like he believed it. The meeting with Virex was even worse than Nari expected. The High Marshal stood behind his desk, his tail lashing back and forth. This was a sign of extreme anger and Skreth. Explain, he demanded. Nari told him everything. She had gotten lost. She had walked through the wrong door. The cubs had run to her. She hadn't called them, or used any signals, or done anything unusual. You must have done something, Virex said. Cubs do not behave this way. I didn't, Nari insisted. I was just standing there. Virex's eyes narrowed. The cubs that ran to you will be investigated. If they have been compromised by some human trick, they will be removed from training. They haven't been compromised, Nari said. They're just young and scared. Warriors are not scared, Virex snapped. Fear is weakness. Weakness is failure. He pointed at the door. You are confined to human quarters until further notice. You will not go near any training areas. You will not interact with any cubs. Am I clear? Yes, sir, Nari said. Back in her quarters, Nari tried to remove Clickwing from her shoulder. The nymph buzzed anxiously and gripped tighter. You have to go back, Nari said gently. You'll get in trouble. Clickwing made a sound like a question. Dr. Hyam came to check on her an hour later. He brought another human with him, a woman named Minji, who worked in the diplomatic corps. The whole station is talking about what happened, Minji said. Half of them think you're some kind of threat. The other half think you use Forbidden's technology. I didn't do anything, Nari said for the 100th time. Hyang was examining Clickwing with a medical scanner. Her stress levels are dropping. They were extremely high before, but being near you is calming her down. How is that possible? Nari asked. I don't know, Hyam said, but I'm going to find out. Over the next 2 days, Nari stayed in her quarters. Hyam visited regularly to run tests. He took samples of her skin, her breath, her hair. He measured her electromagnetic field. He recorded her voice patterns. Minji brought news from the station. The cubs who had run to Nari were being isolated and tested. Virex had called for a special council. Scientists from 3 different species were arriving to investigate the incident. They're treating this like a crisis, Minji said. They think humans might have some kind of mind control ability. That's ridiculous, Nari said. Is it? Minji asked. Think about it. Humans bond with anything. We make friends with animals, with robots, with plants. We cry at sad stories about creatures that don't even exist. Maybe we're broadcasting something that affects others. Nari looked at Clickwing, who was asleep in a nest of blankets on her bed. The little nymph had finally relaxed. She looked peaceful. If we are broadcasting something, Nari said slowly, maybe it's not a bad thing. Hyan came in late that night. He looked excited and scared at the same time. I found something, he said. I need to show you both. He pulled up data on his tablet. Charts and graphs filled the screen. Humans produce a specific combination of pheromones and bioelectric signals. We've always known this. What I didn't know is how these signals are interpreted by other species. And? Minji asked. Cubs in their developmental stage have brain chemistry that makes them extremely sensitive to these signals, Hyan said. When they detect a human, their brains interpret it as a safe caregiver, someone who will protect them, someone who won't hurt them. But adult aliens don't feel this way, Nari said. Adult aliens have different brain chemistry, Hyan explained. The effect only works on juveniles during a specific developmental window. He looked at them. Do you understand what this means? Nari thought about the cubs running to her, about Clickwing refusing to leave, about how desperate they all seemed. It means they needed someone to care about them, she said quietly, and they knew I would. The council meeting was held in the largest conference room on Station Prime. Representatives from 12 different species sat around a circular table. Nari stood in the center, feeling like she was on trial. Marshal Varex spoke first. The human has disrupted our training protocols. She has caused cubs to violate their most basic programming. We must determine if this was intentional. A Mothkar representative, her crystal body shimmering with blue light, raised one limb. Our scientists have examined the human. We found no devices, no chemical weapons, no technological interference. Then how do you explain what happened? Demanded a Vrel elder, his wing cases rattling. Dr. Hyan stepped forward. He had been given permission to speak. May I present my findings? Varex gestured for him to continue. Hyan activated a holographic display. Images of brain scans appeared in the air. Humans evolved as social creatures. We raised our young in groups. We hunted together, lived together, survived together. Our brains developed to recognize and respond to the needs of juveniles, even juveniles that weren't our own. He changed the image to show chemical structures. Humans naturally produce oxytocin, serotonin, and other bonding chemicals. We also emit specific pheromones. These chemicals are not weapons. They're part of how we communicate care and safety to our young. We do not need human chemicals to raise our cubs, Varex said coldly. I'm not suggesting you do, Hyan said. But your cubs are responding to these signals because they're not getting the emotional support they need from current training methods. The room erupted in angry voices. Several representatives stood up. A Skreth general slammed his tail on the ground. You dare criticize coalition training? The general roared. Our methods have created the strongest warriors in the galaxy for 400 years. I'm not criticizing, Hyan said, though his voice shook slightly. I'm explaining what the data shows. The cubs that ran to Nari were all showing signs of extreme psychological stress. High cortisol levels, damaged neural pathways, sleep deprivation. They were suffering. Suffering builds strength, the Vrel elder said. Does it? Asked another human voice. Everyone turned. A man in a pilot's uniform had entered the room. His badge said Jonho, neuropsychologist. I've been studying coalition military records for the past year, Junho said. I have permission from the research division to be here. He looked at Varex, who nodded stiffly. Junho activated his own data display. Coalition warriors have a 30% higher rate of post-combat psychological breakdown compared to human soldiers. They struggle to adapt to changing situations. They have difficulty working in mixed units. And most significantly, they show reduced pack loyalty when under extreme stress. Lies, hissed the Skreth general. It's in your own medical records, Junho said calmly. I can provide the sources. The truth is, your training methods create warriors who are rigid and fragile. They're strong until they break. And when they break, they shatter completely. The room went silent. Junho continued. Human soldiers, by contrast, bend. We experience stress, we acknowledge fear, we support each other through trauma. This doesn't make us weak. It makes us resilient. We recover faster. We adapt better. We survive longer. A voice came from the back of the room. He's right. Everyone turned again. Taiyan walked forward. As the head combat instructor, he commanded respect, even from those who disliked humans. I've trained cubs for 3 years, Taiyang said. I've watched them suffer. I've seen the ones who can't handle the pressure. We tell ourselves that only the strong survive, that the weak are cold naturally. But what if we're culling cubs who could have been great warriors if they'd been given support instead of punishment? Varex stood up. You are suggesting we change 400 years of tradition based on human feelings? I'm suggesting we look at the evidence, Taiyang said. Run a test. Let humans work with one training group. Keep everything else the same with control groups. Measure the results. If I'm wrong, you can ban all humans from the station. But if I'm right, if you're right, what? Varex asked. Then maybe humans have something to teach the coalition, Taiyang said. The debate went on for hours. Nari was questioned repeatedly. Other humans testified. Minji, the diplomat, presented data on human-alien teams that show better performance than pure alien teams. A human engineer named Jiho talked about how human maintenance crews had better safety records because they looked out for each other. Finally, a vote was called. The council was split. 6 species voted to ban humans from all training facilities. 5 species voted to allow the test program. 1 species abstained, thought it came down to High Marshal Varex's deciding vote. He looked at Nari for a long moment. His yellow eyes were unreadable. I do not like this. I do not trust humans. But I am a warrior, not a coward. I will not refuse to test new methods simply because they make me uncomfortable. He voted yes. The test program was approved with strict conditions. 1 group of cubs would train with human mentors for 6 months. The humans could provide emotional support and guidance, but they could not change the physical training requirements or combat standards. At the end of 6 months, the test group would face the same final trials as all other cubs. If they failed, all humans would be removed from the station. If they succeeded, the program would expand. NAR, I was assigned to the program along with 5 other humans, Haiyan, Taiyang, Junho, Minji, and Jiho. They were given a training ground and 30 cubs from various species. Among them was Clickwing, who still refused to leave Nari's side. The first day of the program was difficult. The cubs were confused. They had been taught that emotions were weakness, that asking for help was shameful. That fear meant failure. Taiyang started the session by sitting down on the ground. We're going to do something different today. We're going to talk. The cubs stared at him. I want each of you to tell me one thing that scares you about training. Taiyang said. Silence. Then, slowly, a small screth hatchling raised its claw. I am afraid of failing my clutch mother. If I do not become a warrior, she will be dishonored. That's a real fear, Taiyang said. Thank you for sharing it. One by one, the cubs began to speak. They talked about their fears, their pain, their loneliness. Some of them cried. In their species' own ways, they showed the grief they had been holding inside. The human mentors listened. They didn't punish. They didn't shame. They just listened. And slowly, carefully, something began to change. The cubs started to trust them, but not everyone was happy about this. In the shadows of the station, there were those who saw the human program as a threat. They believed that soft warriors would weaken the coalition. They thought humans were corrupting the natural order, and they were willing to do anything to stop it. Jiho was the first to notice something wrong. He was checking the training ground equipment when he found a device that shouldn't be there. It was attached to the environmental controls, hidden behind a panel. This is a sabotage unit, he said, showing it to Taiyang. Someone was going to make the gravity fail during training. Cubs could have been seriously hurt. Taiyang's expression went dark. Who would do this? Someone who wants our program to fail, Jiho said. And they're willing to hurt cubs to make it happen. Taiyang reported the sabotage device to High Marshal Varex. The investigation revealed that someone had accessed restricted areas using stolen credentials. Whoever was behind this knew the station well and had help from inside the facility. Increased security around the human training area, Virex ordered. I will not have cubs endangered because of political disagreements. Despite his harsh attitude toward humans, Virex took his duty seriously. Cubs were the future of their species. Harming them was unforgivable, but the sabotage attempt had rattled the human team. They knew someone wanted them to fail badly enough to hurt children. We need to be more careful, Minji said during their planning meeting. Watch everything. Trust no one outside our group. The training continued under heavier guard. The cubs were making progress. They were still learning combat skills, still practicing tactics, still building strength. But now they were also learning to work together in new ways. Nari watched as watched. Clickwing helped a struggling Skreth hatchling with a climbing exercise. The hatchling was too heavy for traditional climbing techniques, and his packmates had been mocking him. Clickwing showed him how to use his tail for balance in a different way. The hatchling succeeded, and his whole expression changed from shame to pride. That wouldn't have happened before, Hyan said, standing next to Nari. Before, the strong cubs ignored the weak ones. Now they help each other. Is that better for combat? Nari asked. Or are we making them soft? That's what we're going to find out, Hyan said. 3 months into the program, a pilot named Sora arrived at the station. She brought her entire squadron with her. 3 humans and 4 aliens who had served together for 2 years. Virex had called them to testify about human-alien cooperation in real combat situations. The squadron stood before the council. Sora spoke first. We've flown 37 combat missions together. We faced pirates, smugglers, and hostile military units. Our success rate is 94%. A Mothcar counselor asked, how does this compare to pure alien squadrons? Pure alien squadrons average 76% success rate, Sora said. We're better because we trust each other. We know our wingmates will come back for us if we're in trouble. That trust makes us braver and smarter. One of the alien pilots, a Vrel named Buzzsaw, stepped forward. I was trained the old way. I learned that showing weakness meant death. When I first joined this squadron, the humans confused me. They asked how I felt. They noticed when I was tired or scared. He paused. At first, I thought they were mocking me. Then I realized they actually cared. And this made you fight better? Asked the Skreth general skeptically. It made me fight smarter, Buzzsaw said. Before, if I was damaged in combat, I would hide it because I didn't want to seem weak. I would keep fighting until my ship failed. Now, I tell my squadron when something is wrong. They cover me while I retreat and repair. We all survive more often. Another alien pilot, a Skreth named Fangstrike, added his testimony. Humans taught me that survival is not weakness. They taught me that protecting your pack is more important than proving your strength. In our last battle, I was outnumbered 3-1. The old me would have fought until I died. Instead, I called for help. My human wingmate arrived in 30 seconds. We both survived and completed the mission. The testimonies continued. Story after story of human-alien teams working better, fighting smarter, surviving longer. The council members listened, but many still looked doubtful. Meanwhile, the cubs in the human program were approaching their final trial. In coalition training, the final trial was a massive combat simulation. Cubs had to work together to complete objectives while facing overwhelming opposition. The simulation was designed to be nearly impossible. Many cubs failed. Those who failed were sent home in disgrace. EYNG gathered to human mentors for a final planning session. The trial is in 2 weeks. Our cubs are ready physically. They can fight as well as any traditionally trained group. But this trial is designed to break them psychologically. How? Jiho asked. The simulation will include scenarios where they have to choose between completing the mission and saving injured packmates. Taiyang explained. Traditional training says the mission comes first. Cubs are taught to leave the wounded behind. Nari felt sick. That's cruel. It's reality, Taiyang said. In real combat, sometimes you have to make hard choices. The Coalition wants warriors who can make those choices without hesitation. What do we teach our cubs? Junho asked. Taiyang looked at each of them. We teach them what humans believe. No one gets left behind. We complete the mission, and we bring everyone home. It's harder. It requires more creativity, more teamwork, more trust. But it's the right thing to do. What if they fail because of this? Minji asked quietly. Then we fail together, Taiyang said. But I don't think they will. The cubs trained harder than ever. They practiced rescue techniques. They learned how to adapt plans on the fly. They studied each other's strengths and weaknesses so they could cover for each other. Clickwing had become a leader among the cubs. She was still small, still the one who had been bullied before. But now the other cubs respected her. She could fly and see from above, giving her a tactical advantage. She used this to help coordinate the group. The Skreth hatchling who couldn't climb, whose name was Stonescale, had become the group's defender. He wasn't fast, but he was incredibly strong. He positioned himself to protect the weaker cubs during combat drills. Every cub had found their role. Every cub mattered. The night before the trial, Nari couldn't sleep. She found Taiyang sitting alone in the training ground, looking at the empty obstacle course. Are you worried? She asked, sitting beside him. Terrified, he admitted. If our cubs fail tomorrow, it's not just the end of the program. It tells the galaxy that caring is weakness, that the human way is wrong. Do you believe that? Nari asked. No, Taiyang said immediately. I've seen what caring can do. I've seen these cubs transform from scared, lonely children into a real pack. A pack that supports each other instead of tearing each other down. He smiled sadly. But I'm not the one who needs to be convinced. The Coalition is. The next morning, all the cubs gathered for the trial. 3 groups would compete. The human-trained cubs, and 2 groups trained through traditional methods. Each group had 30 members. High Marshal Varex stood before them all. Today you prove your worth. The simulation will test everything you have learned. Only the strong will succeed. Begin. The 3 groups entered separate simulation chambers. Nari and the other human mentors could only watch through monitors. They weren't allowed to help or interfere. The simulation started. Immediately, things went wrong. The cubs faced overwhelming enemy forces. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and the mission objectives seemed impossible. Nari watched the traditional groups. They fought well, using classic tactics. But when cubs got injured, their packmates left them behind to continue the mission. Then she watched the human-trained group. When Stonescale got hit by simulated weapons fire, Clickwing immediately called for a formation change. 2 cubs created a shield wall, while a third pulled Stonescale to safety. They didn't leave him. They adapted. The mission continued. More cubs got injured. The human-trained group kept adjusting, kept protecting each other, kept pushing forward. It was taking them longer than the traditional groups. They were spending time on rescues that the others ignored. They're falling behind, Minji whispered, watching the time counter. But then something happened. The simulation threw a curveball, a massive equipment failure that created real danger. The environmental controls in the chamber started to malfunction. Gravity fluctuated wildly. Temperature spiked. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was real danger, not simulation. The traditional groups panicked. Cubs scattered. Some tried to reach the exits. Others froze. The human-trained group immediately formed a rescue formation. Clickwing flew through the chaotic gravity to scout safe paths. Stonescale used his strength to hold positions stable. Every cub worked together. and Nari realized something. This wasn't an accident. This was another sabotage attempt. Taiyang was already running toward the simulation chamber before Nari could move. Hyan grabbed emergency medical equipment. Jiho sprinted toward the control room to try to fix the environmental systems. "Get those cubs out of there!" Varex roared into his communicator, but the chamber doors had locked. Another part of the sabotage. The cubs were trapped inside with failing life support and dangerous gravity fluctuations. RI watched the monitors in horror. The traditional groups were in chaos. Cubs were getting hurt, smashing into walls as gravity shifted. Some were crying out for help that wasn't coming. The human-trained group had formed a tight circle. Clickwing was in the center, coordinating. The strongest cubs held on to fixed points and linked limbs to create a living net. When gravity shifted, they held each other. When weaker cubs started to fall, the net caught them. "They're protecting each other," Minji said, her voice full of awe. Taiyang reached the chamber door. It was sealed shut, but he started working on the manual override. His hands moved fast, pulling panels and rerouting connections. Inside the chamber, things were getting worse. The temperature was rising. Cubs were struggling to breathe. But the human-trained group didn't break formation. Stone Scale, the big Scrath who had once been mocked for being slow, was holding 3 smaller cubs against his body, shielding them from impacts. Clickwing, tiny and fragile, was clicking commands that kept everyone coordinated. A Mothcar cub used its crystalline body to reflect light signals when communication systems failed. Every cub had a role. Every cub mattered. Finally, Jiho managed to restore partial control from the command center. The gravity stabilized. The temperature started dropping, but the doors were still locked. "I need 2 more minutes to get the doors open," Taiyang shouted. "The cubs don't have 2 minutes," Hyan said, watching the medical readouts. "They're going into shock from the temperature exposure." Nari made a decision. She ran to the door. "Taiyang, when you get it open, I'm going in." "You're not trained for this," he protested. "Those cubs trust me," Nari said. "If they see me, they'll stay calm. We need them calm." Taiyang looked at her for a second, then nodded. "When the door opens, go straight to them. Don't stop for anything." The door's manual override finally clicked. It slid open with a hiss of escaping hot air. Nari ran inside. The chamber was a mess. Debris everywhere. The air was hot and thin. Cubs from the traditional groups were scattered across the space, some injured, some unconscious. But the human-trained group was still in formation, still holding each other. Clickwing saw Nari and buzzed loudly. The other cubs turned. "It's okay," Nari called to them. "Help is here. You did so well. You kept each other safe." The formation relaxed slightly. Cubs started to cry, releasing the fear they'd been holding inside. But they didn't scatter. They stayed together. Hyan and medical teams rushed in behind Nari. They started treating the injured cubs from all 3 groups. The human-trained cubs helped, showing the medics where others were hurt. Translating for cubs who couldn't speak Coalition Standard. Hi, Marshal Varex entered the chamber last. He walked slowly through the space, looking at the damage, looking at the cubs. His expression was unreadable. He stopped in front of Stonescale, who was still holding the 3 smaller cubs, even though he was clearly exhausted. "You can let them go now," Varex said quietly. "They are safe." Stonescale carefully released the cubs. He swayed on his feet, and Clickwing immediately buzzed for a medic. Varex watched this. Then he turned to look at the scattered cubs from the traditional groups. They had survived, but barely. They had fallen apart when things got hard. The investigation into the sabotage took 3 days. They discovered that a group of extremist trainers had been behind both attempts. They believed that human influence would destroy coalition military strength. They had tried to make the program fail by endangering the Cubs. They were arrested and removed from the station, but the damage had created an unexpected result. The sabotage had turned the final trial into a real emergency. And in that emergency, the difference between training methods became impossible to ignore. The council met one final time to review the results. JUNHO presented his data. The human-trained Cubs showed 40% better cohesion under stress. They adapted to changing conditions 3 times faster than traditionally trained groups. Most importantly, their psychological resilience scores are significantly higher. But did they complete the mission objectives? The Screth General demanded. TAEYNG stood. No, they didn't complete all the mission objectives. They were too busy making sure every single Cub survived. Then they failed, the general said. Did they? Taiyang asked. The mission was a simulation. The danger became real. In real combat, would you rather have warriors who complete objectives but lose half their pack? Or warriors who adapt, survive, and can fight again tomorrow? Sora, the pilot, added, in my squadron, we faced 37 real combat situations. We've completed 35 missions successfully. In the 2 we didn't complete, we chose to save lives over completing objectives. And you know what? We came back stronger. We still trusted each other. We still believed our pack would protect us. The Mothcar representative spoke up. I have reviewed the medical data. Cubs trained with human methods show dramatically lower stress markers. They sleep better. They heal faster from injuries. They report feeling safer and more confident. Confidence based on false comfort, the Vrel elder said. Real combat will destroy this. Will it? Asked a new voice. Everyone turned. A Screth female in military armor had entered the room. Her scales were scarred from many battles. This was Commander Sharpfang, one of the Coalition's most decorated warriors. I have been watching the human program, Sharpfang said. I was skeptical. I believed, like many of you, that emotional support makes warriors weak. She paused. I was wrong. The room went silent. I have fought in 63 battles, Sharpfang continued. I have seen packs break under pressure. I have seen warriors freeze when things go wrong. I have watched as our strongest fighters shatter when faced with trauma they don't know how to process. She looked at the council members. The human-trained Cubs did not break. When real danger came, they became stronger. They became more united. That is not weakness. That is the foundation of true warrior strength. The vote was called. This time, it wasn't close. 10 species voted to expand the human train program. Only 2 voted against. The program was approved for full implementation. 6 months later, Nari stood in the observation deck watching the latest training session. The human-trained Cubs had graduated and been assigned to active units. New Cubs had arrived for training. Clickwing was there too, though she wasn't a Cub anymore. She had grown into a full adult Vro and had chosen to stay on Station Prime as a junior instructor. She wanted to help the next generation of Cubs the way Nari had helped her. How does it feel? Hyan asked, standing beside Nari. Strange, Nari admitted. 6 months ago, they thought we were contaminating their Cubs. Now we're part of the standard training program. You changed their minds, Hyan said. The Cubs changed their minds, Nari corrected. We just showed them a different way. Down on the training ground, a new human mentor was working with a group of young Cubs. They were practicing tactical formations, but when one Cub fell and scraped a limb, the others immediately stopped to help. The alien trainers watched but didn't intervene. This was the new protocol. Strength and compassion together. TAEYNG joined them at the window. Hi, Marshal Varex wants to see you. Nari felt a flutter of nervousness. Even after everything, Varek still intimidated her. In his office, Varek stood looking out at the station. He didn't turn when Nari entered. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. Nari blinked in surprise. "Sir, I believed humans were weak because you feel deeply. I believed caring was a flaw." He turned to face her. "I was raised to think that emotions were the enemy of discipline, that a good warrior must be hard, cold, unbreakable." He paused. "But unbreakable things are also inflexible. They cannot adapt. And when they finally break, they shatter." "You're not weak for changing your mind," Nari said quietly. "No," Varex agreed. "I am stronger for it. That is what you taught me. That is what humans have taught the Coalition." He held out his clawed hand in the human gesture of a handshake. "Thank you." Nari shook his hand. As she left his office, she passed through the corridors of Station Prime. Cubs from a dozen species called out greetings to her. Some ran up to show her their training scores. Others just wanted to walk beside her for a moment. They didn't run to her in desperation anymore. They ran to her in trust, in friendship, in the knowledge that they were valued and protected. Nari thought about that first day when she had accidentally walked into the training ground, when the Cubs had broken all expectations and run to her. Everyone had thought something was wrong, but maybe, just maybe, the Cubs had been right all along. Maybe they had seen something in humans that the adults were too rigid to recognize. Maybe caring wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the greatest strength of all. And maybe, in teaching the galaxy this lesson, humanity had finally found their place among the stars. Not as warriors despite their emotions, but as warriors because of them. Outside the station window, the stars shone bright and endless.